In the Arctic wilderness, a place few dare to explore, a brave man risked everything to save a trapped bear from cruel poachers. But what he received in return was completely unexpected, a moment that would change his life forever. This is the story of Ethan Callahan, a brave ranger in the frozen northern wilderness Arctic Reserve. Life here is not easy. The cold bites, the wind cuts like knives, and snow covers everything. Every day, Ethan wakes up early and steps into this harsh world. He walks long paths, checks the forests, and keeps watch over the land. It is hard work, but he knows it is important. Danger can appear without warning, and every moment matters. One morning, the cold was sharper than usual, and the snow blew across his face. Suddenly, he heard a sharp, desperate cry. It was a young animal, trapped and frightened. The sound pierced through the quiet snow and made Ethan's heart race. Without any second thought, Ethan was ready to go into the deep snow because he knew the cries were for help. The snow was cold and deep, reaching his knees, and the wind blew hard against his face. Every step was hard, but he kept moving, following the sound of the little animal. Soon, he reached a narrow ice bridge over a frozen river. Looking down, he saw a tiny polar bear cub trapped at the bottom of a deep pit. The cub was shivering and could not move properly, its fur covered in frost. The walls of the pit were smooth and steep, and this pit was not made by nature. It had been made by poachers, so the baby bear could not climb out. Fresh claw marks and small drops of blood showed how hard the cub had tried to escape, but failed. Ethan knew he had to act fast, because every second that passed made the baby bear weaker and colder. Looking around, Ethan's eyes fell on the mother bear. She was trapped in a steel net, her paw painfully caught in the cold, tight metal cables. The more she tried to pull free, the worse her injury became. She looked toward her cub, her eyes full of fear and helplessness. The trap had been set by poachers, anchored into a massive block of ice, frozen deep into the ground. Ethan's chest tightened with anger at the cruelty, but he knew he could not act recklessly. The cub's life was the priority, and he needed a careful plan. Ethan quickly reached into his backpack and pulled out climbing gear, a strong rope, carabiners, and small blocks to make a hoisting system. His gloved hands were already numb from the cold, but he did not waste a second. Every movement had to be precise. He focused on freeing the cub first, knowing that every second counted for both mother and baby. Ethan didn't have time, and setting up the hoist had to be done carefully. He tied one end of the rope to a large ice outcrop, checking that it would hold the weight of the cub. His hands were numb from the cold, and the icy rope slipped slightly as he held it, but he did not stop. He threw the loop toward the cub, and it brushed the small bear's side, making it jerk weakly, but it was not secure. Ethan took a deep breath and tried again, keeping his focus on every movement. The second attempt slipped off the cub's fur, and a pang of fear ran through him as he heard the faint hum of snowmobiles in the distance. On the third attempt, he threw the loop perfectly, and it caught firmly around the cub's small body. He lifted it slowly, careful of the jagged ice along the pit walls, while the blizzard roared around him. Finally, he reached solid ground, and the cub trembled violently, coated in ice and shivering from cold and exhaustion. Ethan wrapped it in a thermal blanket and checked its body. Aside from minor cuts and frostbite, the cub seemed stable. Its half-closed eyes met his, trusting him completely, and he hid it safely behind a snowbank before turning to help the mother bear. The mother's situation was worse than the cub's. The lock on her trap was strong and complicated, with several tamper-proof mechanisms. Ethan's fingers were numb from the cold, but he carefully pulled out his multi-tool and focused on the task. The mother bear seemed to understand he was there to help. Her dark, wary eyes followed every movement, and each time she tried to shift, the cables around her paw tightened painfully. Drops of freezing blood glistened on the metal. In the distance, the hum of snowmobiles grew louder. The poachers were returning, and Ethan knew he had little time. And he moved on to the next part. Suddenly, the poachers appeared. 3 men, armed, moving quickly through the snowstorm. Their leader, a tall man with a gray beard, noticed the empty trap first. Rage twisted his face as he realized their catch was gone. The second poacher moved toward the mother bear. Ethan stayed close, hidden behind her massive body, fingers working quickly and carefully. The second level of the lock clicked open. Only the final mechanism remained. One of the poachers spotted movement and shouted, stepping forward with his gun raised. And Ethan knew the final seconds would decide everything. The blizzard gave Ethan the one chance he needed. A sudden blast of wind lifted the snow and covered the view of the poachers. For a short moment, they could not see. Ethan quickly unlocked the last chain. The heavy links fell onto the frozen ground with a loud clatter. The mother bear rose at once. Her huge white body looked like a mountain of snow. Her eyes burned with rage. The poachers froze, unable to move as fear held them in place. Ethan used that moment to run into the storm. Behind him, the bear let out a deep roar that shook the night. The men shouted in panic and scattered. Minutes later, Ethan returned to the hidden cub. The mother bear had already found it by smell and instinct. She lifted the small one gently in her jaws. Then she vanished into the endless white, looking for safer ground to survive the winter. Ethan let out a deep breath, full of relief. But he knew the danger was not gone. For 2 months, he stayed alert. Strange snowmobile tracks appeared in faraway places. It felt as if someone was studying his patrol routes. Ethan was sure the poachers were still searching for him. One bitter day, the cold was sharper than ever. Ethan found fresh signs, trampled snow, cigarette butts, and deep tracks. He took out his camera to record the evidence, but he did not know the poachers were already close. A gunshot cracked the air. It was only a blank, a warning. Before he could move, 4 armed men closed in. Their gray-bearded leader stepped forward. Ethan's heart raced as he was struck down, tied with ropes, and forced into the snow. The poachers had chosen this lonely part of the reserve because they knew no one would come to help. Suddenly, one of the men stopped. His face turned pale, and his breath caught in his throat. The others looked around, straining to see through the thick white curtain of snow. Out of the swirling storm, a huge figure slowly appeared. It was the mother bear. She moved with silent strength, each step steady and powerful. Ethan's heart jumped when he saw the scar on her paw. He knew at once. It was the same bear he had saved months before. "Don't move," the leader whispered, lifting his gun. But before he could aim, the bear stepped between Ethan and the poachers. She stood tall and unshaken, her presence like a wall of living snow. The men began to back away, their fear plain on their faces. Every step they took made the bear growl louder, a sound that cut through the storm. One of the poachers panicked. He reached for his rifle, his hands shaking. The bear reacted at once. She snarled and took a strong step forward. The message was clear. Any attack would end in death. "Let him go," the leader shouted. At once, the men turned and ran. They dropped their gear as they fled into the blizzard, their shadows fading into the endless white. The bear did not leave. She stayed close, her eyes fixed on Ethan. Though her size was terrifying, her actions were calm and careful. Slowly, she came closer and sniffed the ropes tied around his wrists. Then, with gentle precision, she bit at the knots. Her powerful teeth could crush bone, yet she was careful not to hurt him. Bit by bit, the ropes loosened until they fell away. Ethan rubbed his sore wrists and felt freedom return. "Thank you," he whispered softly. The bear tilted her massive head, as if she understood. In that quiet moment, a bond was formed, built on trust, memory, and survival. At last, the bear turned and walked back into the storm. Her huge body faded into the snow, and her tracks disappeared behind her. Ethan stood alone in the silent blizzard, carrying a story no one would ever believe.